Okay, welcome everybody to the National Popular Assembly Discord meeting. This is 9/20/2020, and we are starting back up with Class 6 docs, which are the grand jury classes. And if you want to learn how to join the National Popular Assembly Discord, what you can do from the Vocational Science of Freedom YouTube channel is you can click in the upper right hand corner where it says click here to join the MPAD, and all you have to do is download Discord and click here and join in the discussion for free on Sunday night. And to find the recordings for the Sunday nights, they'll be in Class 6, which will be clearly in between 5 and 7, which we have not yet finished yet. So all these recordings will be free and be uploaded on the National Popular Assembly section of the Vocational Science of Freedom YouTube channel as is recorded as we record them here, and then afterwards we have discussion about the class, which I do not record. So to get started, go ahead and click on Class 6 docs, and let's open up the grand jury report on causes of local corruption. This was a document that I came across about a year ago, I think, in scuttling around on archive.org because I was looking for grand jury information. Now it's only 68 pages, so it's not that long. It's a quick read, but what it shows is the interesting report of how to do a report as a grand jury. So this the date, I don't know if anybody can see this, it's pretty small. It goes back to January 5th, 1910. And the name of the report is Report on Causes of Municipal Corporation, Report on the Causes of Municipal Corruption in San Francisco, as disclosed by the investigators of the Oliver Grand Jury and the prosecution of certain persons for bribery and other offenses against the state. Now that's a pretty lengthy name, but the grand jury should be detailed when they do make a report as to what on earth they were investigating and what they're going to bring forward as the information that they found. And again, this was done in the very early 1900s. The committee appointed actually was on October 12th, 1908. Now I'm gonna make this wider so everybody can see it, and then so that it shows up on the recording. So as you can see in the preface, it's stating the aspect of the significance of this report, aside from its obviously fair and judicial temper, lies in the character of the men who prepared it. The chairman of the committee is Mr. William Denham, a leader in the San Francisco bar and son of the founder of the public school system of the city. Mr. Alexander Goldstein has a wide reputation for honesty, won success in business, and for large public spirit, yada, yada, yada. So basically what they're doing in the preface of this is kind of explaining who they are and what their background is and what this report is about. And then they start with a resolution. So resolved that the Board of Supervisors hereby expresses its appreciation for the labor of the committee, so on and so forth, what they're doing, and adopted unanimously by a standing vote in the Board of Supervisors, yada yada, in January 5th of 1910. And it then goes on to its contents. So we have all of the aspects of what they were investigating into and what they found. For example, the widespread of evils which lent support to corrupt government, as shown by the character of the crimes for which indictments were brought by the Oliver Grand Jury. So they investigated, they brought indictments, and then they gave it to the prosecutor to prosecute. Now, as far as grand jury functioning, if you will, I will get into the larger history of the grand jury throughout Class 6. I've made a point to post other grand jury classes on the Vocational Science of Freedom, of which I've gone much more deeply into the history of the grand jury. But just for short, we have the power and the capacity of a grand jury that comes from us from the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is a founding documentation of the liberties of England, and it was laid down and signed by King John in 1215 when the barons at a little battlefield called Runnymede decided to corner him, and him was a offspring or descendant of William the Conqueror, who the barons pretty much had enough of, and said basically, sign this Magna Carta, we're going to cut your filthy head off. And in doing so, every single king since King John has confirmed the Magna Carta in what was called the Carfamara Cartarum, or the confirming charter, which then declared that the Magna Carta is the common law. And since we were at one point a British colony, we adopted the English common law. But the vast difference between what we can do in America with a grand jury compared to any other former British colony, meaning Canada, meaning Australia, New Zealand, so on and so forth, anyone else, is that we are sovereign. The people of America are sovereign. And because of that, when 25 of us get together, we become higher than government. And I have posted in the MPAD, in the main chat, I believe it was, a video about, no, actually, I'll show you what it was. The video, because I want to make a point of this specific video, because in 17 minutes and 20 seconds into this particular video, there is a retired, I don't exactly know what they call them in England. I don't know if they call them chief judges in England or not. But anyway, he was basically a retired chief judge in England. And what he stated was that when I put it under great teachers, so it's under MPAD reference, this particular video that I'm speaking of. It's under MPAD reference under great teachers, and then it's how the common law works. So if you go to that, and then you go to 17 minutes 20 seconds into that video, you can listen to what this particular judge was speaking about regarding the fact that when the 25 barons got together, they literally took over government. They were more powerful than the king, and they took government away from the king. Well, that's no different than what we can do here. And when 25 people, meaning 25 of us who have come of full age, have removed ourselves from the system and are not under all of the presumptions, which of course we speak upon and I spoke upon in other lectures. When you are in your sovereign capacity, without question, 25 of us get together, we can indict who we feel like, we can investigate who we feel like, we can subpoena what we feel like, we can subpoena basically whatever we feel like from any municipal corporation, which is of course what this report from the grand jury speaks upon in its report. And that that was the specificity and the importance of Hale versus Hinkle. In Hale versus Hinkle, the point that was made was that the grand jury subpoenaed documents from a corporation, and what had happened was that the officer of the corporation, who had duty to give these documents to the grand jury, said, well, do you have an indictment? The grand jury said, no, we don't need one. And the man thought that they did, and so he refused to give up the documents for the subpoena. And so the grand jury went to the chief judge and said, well, here, we're going to hold this man in contempt because he's not giving us what we want. And the man then attempted to file a habeas corpus to free himself from the contempt charge of the grand jury. And the judge said, what do you want from me? You're being held in contempt by the grand jury, and there's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that I can do about it for you. So because of that, the grand jury can hold anyone in contempt who does not produce the documents of which they demand, because they are literally above government and know, and here's the kicker with this, is that you don't have any protection of Fourth Amendment rights under the grand jury, because you are literally being held by a power that is above the government and the constitutional rights, which you would have protection of from the government that was created by the Constitution, but the grand jury is above that. So just to keep that in mind as kind of an aside, and to read Hale versus Hinkle, you understand that, and it's an important read, and to understand that's part of the power of the grand jury. So to go back to the report, like I said, it's not too long. It's 68 pages. It's a very interesting read. I'm not going to read through it, but it gives a good sense of when one, or a group, when 25 of us get together to do a grand jury, it gives a good idea of what you should lay out as far as a report is concerned. It says, this is what we did, this is why we did it. So part of the report here. So report on the causes of municipal corruption in San Francisco as disclosed by the investigation of the grand jury and the prosecution of certain persons of bribery and other officers in the state. So they have the pre part, and then they get into actually what they did. So the earlier investigation by the Wallace grand jury and the adoption of the charter. So it gives a report, so on and so forth. They say what they did. They say that they put in quotes from various different people. Like it says, the mayor is helpless. He cannot do anything. He is only a chief clerk, and he gets into why they have the power to do all this. And it says that the report was signed by the following grand jurors, so you make sure that that everybody signs it. And when those who have properly done their doc set and have removed themselves from the system and have rebutted the presumptions and are under their own house and properly have created their house seal, when you get 25 of us together, everyone should sign and seal whatever report and whatever indictment that we find the need to bring forward, so that it is properly signed and sealed and delivered, as the old saying goes that everybody knows but very few follow any longer, because the seal is something that has been left out of modern jurisprudence, and for nefarious reasons that protect those who try to take everything from us, basically. So I'm not going to get into the rest of this, into the rest of the report. Everybody can feel free to read it. It's interesting as to what they found, and it's interesting as to what their power is, and it gives a really good sense of it, because it's something that's been laid down before the New Deal. When you want to go looking for information about how to, say, run something like a grand jury like this, or how to create something, or even particularly how to run courts of record, common law courts of record, you want to look up documents and treatises that predate, preferably 1933, but even more so, that would predate even the creation before these scumbags started their Federal Reserve, which was 1913. So you want to look for pre-1913. Late 1800 books in between the end of the Civil War and 1900 are some of the best finds, because it was a lot of understanding of freedom, and people were really, rightfully so, angered about how the whole Civil War debacle had happened, and they wanted to get back to prosperity, and they wanted to get back to being free and running their communities the way they should be run. So anyway, to look for documents and books in that era, if you will, that time period, is beneficial to find books that will help you learn things that haven't been corrupted by this idea of trying to merge law and equity, which is like trying to merge water and oil. So anyway, down to Hale versus Hinkle, the top one that I have, like I said, is it's the entire holding of Hale versus Hinkle. It's a good read. And then the grand jury U.S. versus Williams is the other entire holding, which is good to read because in U.S. versus Williams it explains that we have that the Supreme Court said that we have the power, the people have the power to create a grand jury whenever they wish, and basically there's nothing they can damn well do about it, which of course makes sense because it's impossible for them to put rules on something that is above them. So I'll leave those two for everyone else's reading pleasure, and then I'll come down to the next one I'm going to open up is grand jury letter to the judge filed. So this is an interesting document that I had found because it's not even all that old. It goes back to August 4th, 2014. So this is a letter that a foreman sent to a judge, being pretty forward about how mad he was regarding the way that the grand jury was being handled, and what he was supposedly allowed to do or not to do, or so on and so forth. Now, the reason why you have somebody like this, a grand jury foreman, complaining to a judge and saying, "Well, why can't this? We should be able to do this." Well, the point is that if they had 25, which they didn't, and they never do, it's only an advisory grand jury. If you get 25 people that are out, there is nothing that they can do about it. Absolutely nothing. But if you have less than 25 and you have some district attorney in there, or some other filthy attorney, some member of the Bar Association, they're controlling the grand jury, well, then they're going to not allow you to do what you can and should be able to do by your own power. They're going to try to stifle it and stop it and so on and so forth. So anyway, to kind of get into this letter here. Your Honor, I'm afraid we have some serious problems. Just to refresh your memory, I would first like to review with you a very important Supreme Court case, U.S. versus Williams, 1992. I will then explain in detail the dimensions of the problems we face and the best solution, I think, of the remedy this ugly situation I believe Mr. Stiegmeister has put us in. Now, I don't even know if that's his real name or not. This particular letter might have been slightly altered to protect the names of the guilty, but maybe not. I'm not sure. But anyway, so background. As foreman, so this is the foreman writing, I've been frustrated in every effort to bring before the jury a matter of the utmost urgency and concern, dealing with fraud and corruption within and among a number of our public offices. Note, because the information I have involves crimes also affecting surrounding counties, it is my duty to reach out to those jurisdictions. Because, okay, now just to make an important point here, when you have a grand jury, technically every grand jury should function in the county of which it was convened. Now, that's not to say you can't have a state grand jury. You can. However, that would deal with entire statewide matters. So, for example, like this lunacy going on right now with these governors thinking they can declare an emergency without there being any proof of any emergency, and then ordering everybody to close their businesses and wear masks. That's a statewide emergency. So you could pull people from 25 different counties and convene a statewide grand jury. And here's the other thing too. It can be larger than 25 if you want. I mean, I've put this out there to suggestion. There used to be something called the Court of 100. Now, the Court of 100 didn't actually consist of 100 people. What it was basically 100 families. That this was a court that pre-existed what we think of as the grand jury, which was laid down in, like I said, 1215.org in Article 61 of the Magna Carta. But the Court of 100 was something that predated it. That there was much more people in that assembly that did that sort of business, but it functioned much like a grand jury does today, which was something that William the Conqueror in 1066, who came over, filthy serpent seed line, Luciferian piece of scum, came over to destroy England. He got rid of the Court of 100 because he realized that was the self-rule that the Celts and Druids had, that they could take care of themselves and really had no reason to bow down to him at all. So anyway, just as an aside, you can have more than 25 if you want. Try to stay within your county if it's a county matter. If it's a state matter, you can convene 25, make it larger than 25 if you wish, And I mean, honestly, the sky's the limit. But just remember, since we're all sovereign, it's kind of like herding cats. So just make sure that you're going to have to give good arguments. You're going to have to find your evidence. You're going to have to produce your proper facts, and you're going to have to do good work to make sure that everything that you do in the grand jury is proper and will, because basically what you're doing, as Bill Thornton said one time, that a court is nothing more than a stage where a sovereign puts on his show to prove to the rest of the world that he's right. That's all it is. And that's all it's ever going to be. So when we get 25 together, we have to prove to the rest of the world that what we're doing is right and the reasons for it. But so anyway, so to get back to the letter. Because the information I have involves crimes also affecting surrounding counties, it is my duty to reach out to those jurisdictions, which is a wise thing to do as foreman. I directly contacted Levy and Gilchrist County Clerk of Court on or about July 28th, requesting they give my contact information to the grand jury foreperson of their respective counties and ask them to contact me on a matter of official business. I received no response from either county's clerk or grand jury foreman. Now, of course, I can guarantee you what happened is that the clerk did absolutely no such thing. The clerks didn't pass that on. The clerks went and gave it to the district attorney, and the district attorney said, no, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And then, of course, did nothing. The capacity and the ability for grand juries to speak to each other from across county lines and across the whole state, and having a system of which everybody is up to speed as to what all the grand juries are doing, not only in your own county, but from the entire state side, is something that we should establish and put forward and do as a people. Not ask permission to do it, we should just do it. And that's part and parcel of the reason why we have established the National Popular Assembly Discord, so that we can organize the states, and that inside the organization of the states, every county can organize itself too. And when 25 people are ready in a county, they can take over their county. That's not an exaggeration. It's not a joke. It's an absolute truth. But you have to get 25 in each county to be able to do that. And then not only can they take over and get rid of corruption in their own county and check the books of every single municipal corporation in that county, but they can also protect each other. Anybody pokes any one of you, they get to poke the whole beehive. So just keep that in mind as well. This is not just a way to save the Republic, it's also a way to save yourselves, if you understand the power of which you have in this capacity. So, to continue. So he says, I received no response from either county clerks or grand jury foreman. Well, no surprise there. From the grand jury instructions, 4.10. Now this, I don't know exactly which state what this was out, but instructions they're meaningless. They mean nothing. We don't have to follow them. They're there for advisory purposes, but they're absolutely not necessary at all as far as a requirement is concerned. So, but anyway, this grand jury has a duty to cooperate with any other grand jury investigations being conducted in this county or elsewhere in the state if the administration of justice requires it. Now, of course, that's right there, attorney talk, administration of justice. Anyway, I won't get into that at the moment. Including making reports of your own investigation available to any subsequent grand jury of the county. Now, that's extremely important, because every grand jury that comes after needs to have capacity of being able to not only have the open records of the former grand jury, and to be able to search them, which is why everything should be done digitally in this day and age, because with things like, say, if you make a PDF, all you have to do is hit Control F, and then you can come up to your little search bar up here, and you can punch in whatever you want, and you can find it instantly. So if you're looking for somebody's name, or if you're looking for whatever, you can do that instantly. So all records and all this capacity of digital records should all be used to the utmost highest capacity for all of us in all of our counties and all of our states to get this done correctly, so that we're never without knowledge, and we're never forgetting what somebody might have done before us. So anyway, continue with the letter. I'm in possession of a complaint concerning a subject of which our state attorney, Mr. Jeffrey Stigmeister, has been aware of for some time, yet has failed to act. Well, attorneys do not act on anything that will alter commerce. if it is going to detract from commerce or if it's going to hurt one of their fellow filthy scumbags, they'll never, ever act on it, period. They won't. You have to. So, as he says, it is my sworn duty as a member of the grand jury to make this matter known to my fellow jurors so they may evaluate its validity and issue a true bill if they deem it appropriate, which is exactly what their duty is to do. Not being familiar with the process, I went to the clerk of the court, Dana Johnson, who on July 21st, and requested she schedule a session of the grand jury. See attached hand-delivered letter. I received no immediate response. Again, that's not a surprise. Not only do these people not understand law and our power and grand jury procedure, it's our duty to teach them. It's our duty to tell them what we're going to do and the reasons why we have the right to do it. And if they get in the way, indict them too. So anyway, the following day I returned Mrs. Johnson's office and inquired as to the status of my request. She informed me instead of handling the arrangements within her office, she had forwarded the request to, surprise, surprise, Mr. Stigmeister, and he would be calling me the next day, the 23rd. Late in the afternoon of the 23rd, I received Mr. Stigmeister's call, and he informed me he would notify the jurors by mail, of their need to appear at the first opportunity. I further suggested, in order to avoid wasting the jurors' time and the county's money, it would be very important he include in his notice a copy of the jury instructions. The grand jury handbook, which I'm not exactly sure what that was in this particular county or location, but I have a grand jury handbook, which when I get finished editing, I'm going to make available to the entire country so that everybody is well aware of what their powers are and how to properly function in a grand jury, and I'll have everything in there. I'll have templates, indictments, everything. And the U.S. Constitution, along with a simple instruction to please read and understand the documents, with a reminder the proceedings must remain secret. That's another aspect of the grand jury. Grand jury proceedings are, by nature, secret, but the grand jury can even meet in secret. You get 25 people together, and then 4 of them go out as investigators of the grand jury, which is clearly laid out in the Magna Carta, which you can go read. It says that if 4 investigators of the grand jury go out and investigate whoever or whatever, they are more powerful than any cop, any United States Marshal, any sheriff. If 4 members of the grand jury go out together as investigators of the grand jury, they can pretty much demand anything from any corporation anywhere. And if they don't get it, all they have to do is say, because remember, 4 is a quorum. So if they go out as 4 as a quorum, they can literally act and do whatever they need to do as in the name of the grand jury themselves whenever they're out and about. So if they have to go in and do something like, say, go smack around Mr. Sigmeyer, they can do that. They can demand that he produce a document. They can do that. They don't have to get the rest of the information, or they don't have to get the rest of the permission, because they're acting as investigators directly. So anyway, to continue, I emailed him a letter to be included with the above item, see attached. Mr. Stigmeister sent out a notification along with the jury instructions and handbook omitting the Constitution and my instructions. Mr. Johnson's office also mailed out an official notice to the jurors on July 30th. I went to Miss Johnson's office and requested several items. To note Judge Cynthia McMurtrick to see the room in which we would be meeting, to use the copier services and for jury materials, determine if there was a budget, as handbook indicates, list of jurors, names, and contact info, inquire about the procedure if less than a quorum. After viewing the courtroom, I noticed my concern over the recording equipment and the potential conflict with requiring the proceedings to be secret. She assured me no other room in the courthouse could hold 20 people, which is, I'm sure, wasn't even accurate. But since I was concerned, she committed to have the microphones turned off. Mr. Johnson told me there was no budget for the grand jury. That is a lie. Every county should have a budget for the grand jury, and every grand jury has the capacity to not only look it over as far as an overview, but they also have the right to access it and use it. So said I could use the copier in the commissioner's office, and she would get me a copy of the jurors list. She also added she wasn't aware of any procedure for dealing with less than a quorum, referring me to state's attorney for information. Again, these are all things that that everyone should know before they even so much as convene a grand jury. But and so you're not going to these useful idiots and trying to get information from them, which they don't have anyway. And furthermore, the state's attorney is not going to help you anyway, nor would a district attorney. So anyway, on the 31st, I had still not received the jury list, and I inquired again, receiving nothing but excuses and no results. On the morning of the grand jury session, I arrived at the courthouse and began preparations for the meeting. Mr. Johnson was not in her office on Friday, and I was told I could reach her cell if I had any concerns. I told the clerk it was imperative, but I have that imperative. I have the jury list, so I would know who was supposed to be there and verify identities. No one seemed to know what was going on. You see his frustration here? They're not going to help us run our own nation. Period. Ever. So, of course, no one's ever going to be taught what should be going on, right? So anyway, the rest of this letter is basically him continuing to complain and bitch about the state's attorney and Mr. Stigmeister and whatnot, and basically at the end, and says to the judge, I offer the following for your consideration. He's the jury foreman is doing what he feels he should do, but he's not understanding his power. He's not understanding that he can turn around and subpoena these people. He's not understanding that he can turn around and hold these people in contempt if they don't do exactly what he demands that they do. Okay? So anyway, it's an interesting read. You should, and everybody can read the rest of it. I won't read the rest of it in its entirety, because I want people to be able to read through these things at their own convenience and take the time. But here he speaks upon the damages to the people. Among the offenses committed by Mr. Stigmeyer, criminal contempt, due process of law, obstruction of justice, and coercion or manipulation of others to do the same, jury tampering, contempt of court, deprivation of rights. You see? So he's saying, look, this is what this idiot has been doing. And this is exactly what they should do. They should bring an indictment against him and remove him forever from public office and throw him in jail if you have to. Get rid of every filthy attorney that thinks they can get in the way of the grand jury. Every one of them. Until the entire bar association learns their lesson. Okay. Okay, this apparently happened to be in Florida, so it says clerk for Dixie, Florida. So anyway, I'm not gonna read the rest of this, but so he signs and sends it in and gives it to the judge, and I don't know exactly what happened with this scenario, but you can see the lack of information and the lack of knowledge as to what he could have just done. He could have just done these various different things and not had to even so much as ask their permission for any of it. He could have just done it. So anyway, so that's that. It's an interesting letter to read over. I think tonight I'm going to skip over our COPS constitutional doc. I'll come back to that later. It's an interesting historical aspect of where the hell the idea of the police came from, and the fact that they didn't even exist in the beginning, the colonial days. So let's get into the Citizens Rulebook jury. This is a very easy read. I know that it's just in a text doc, but of course then that makes it easy for anybody to be able to read. And it was let me see if there's got a date on here. I know I found this back in the early 90s, honestly, and no surprise because it's in a text doc. But so the table of contents: jury duty, you are above the law. Jury rights, law of the land, Ten Commandments, Communist Manifesto, giving up rights, jury tampering, and then some other aspects of historical documents, and then original documents that people can obviously have these with just getting just this whole document. So again, this is something I'm going to basically leave to everyone to go ahead and read through. I don't know how many pages it is because you can never really tell with a text doc, but if I had to guess by scrolling here, I'd say it was somewhere around maybe 40 or 50 pages, something like that, I would guess. So but I took a lot of information from this particular old doc that was, like I said, created back in the 90s to help me format and create and put together my grand jury manual. So again, this is just another doc for people to have and to read for their own reference points, and it'll be here available in class 6 docs for anybody that wants it and anybody that needs it. And of course, as always, with any of the documents and things that we have on the National Popular Assembly, you can feel free to download any of these and pass them on and email them to anyone who you feel is interested in understanding their own sovereignty, their own freedom, and being self-governing in this republic. So let's move on to the next document on self-government. This is another document that I found on, I believe, archive.org, and I found it completely by accident. I wasn't even looking for it, but when I did open it up, I realized what a gem I'd actually found, because the print date is 1847. This is pre-Civil War. This was the height of the knowledge of we the people prior to the Filthy Bar Association and the International Banking Cartel coming in and basically destroying, or attempting to destroy, everything of which the colonists had taken. So the title, On Self-Government, together with general plans of a state constitution and a constitution for a confederation of states, founded on the principle of self-government. Also, 2 extracts, one from the Constitution of the United States of North America, the other from that of the state of Kentucky, to which is added the new Constitution of the state of New York. This was shortly after New York had redone its constitution, examined according to the principles of self-government. Again, printed in Boston, 1847. Now, I'll skip the preface and I'll get into the contents. The contents are extensive, and you'll see that this book is probably one of the most important books that you could probably ever have read, and probably one of the most important books that you could ever have your children read as well. I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger. I don't know how well this is going to show up on YouTube or not, but for later. But so, table of contents: self-government, meaning of the word, republics in Europe, self-governments in America. See, they're making a distinction. Division of self-government into personal and social. Self-government acquired by education, instruction, and industry. Personal self-government, social self-government. Education examined in regard to the principle of self-government. That's, of course, important, and that's, of course, where they've attacked us hardest. They've attacked us the hardest in the aspect that they've removed civics. Civics is the study of one's personal rights, and civics is something that has been eviscerated out of public schooling, obviously for good reason. If you have a society that you want to turn either socialist or communist or take control over, the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure to dumb them down. And the removal of civics and the study of one's personal rights, here spoken of the education examined in regard to the principles of self-government, is one of the first things you have to do to destroy a nation. And they've done a very, very good job of that. Which is
no one will give you the knowledge you need to overthrow them.
Right, exactly. No one is ever going to give you their own knowledge to overthrow them. And them is the Bar Association, meaning the British Accreditation Registry, the Knights, the Templars, which are the Bar Association. The Knights Templar are the Bar Association. The International Banking Cartel, which is all of the bloodline banking families, and of course the Cult of Rome, which is what rules Europe still. Which is why all of Europe is still being ruled by Roman civil law and not by common law. So anyway, to continue here, instruction in regard to self-government, industry in regard to self-government, origins and necessity of laws, states, counties, towns. This is important. This section is really interesting because it gets into the difference of how these various different things are supposed to be broken up. But anyway, constitutions, right of suffrage, crown rights, meaning note as in like they don't have any anymore, at least here, town business, size of towns, census, boundary line, territory, primitive settlers, state makers, because obviously those that went in and created the new states from the territories, this is all in here. All of this aspect's in here. Annexation, congressional land trade, annexation, Texas, war in Genoa with Mexico, licenses, charters, tertius banks, tariffs, customs, indirect taxes, patent rights. That's important because we no longer hold a allodial title to the patents of our own land, which is why these municipalities think they can come in and they can administer and tell us what to do on our own land as if we were residents. A resident is someone who is there someplace temporarily doing business, and when they're done doing business, they'll go back to wherever the hell they came from. That's a resident. Someone who is lawfully domiciled is lawfully there by right, and should have in this country, because all lands in this nation are allodial, and there are various different constitutions, particularly Wisconsin's constitution, states that all lands in Wisconsin are allodial and feudal tenures are prohibited. What does that mean? That means that you don't have a higher landlord. That means you don't have to pay property taxes. Because what property tax is a forced contract upon you for privileges and benefits which they consider that you are taking from them, and so therefore you have to pay for. Well, whoever said I ever entered into a contract for those benefits? What, just because I'm here? Just because your municipality thinks it has jurisdiction over my land? How did that work? But anyway, land patents and allodial title is a whole other class, which I have set aside under, I believe it's class 8. Class 8 is everything about allodial title, and we've already done those classes months ago, and so you guys can go and look that up and get caught up for that information in class 8. But anyway, so I'm not going to read all the rest of this, but here's the rest of the contents. Harbors, lighthouses, slavery, naturalization, state business, administration of justice, how to improve it, pardoning power, foreign laws, that one's important. Indirect taxes, again, that's extremely important because you can only have direct and indirect taxes, and if you have a direct tax, it has to be apportioned. That means everybody has to pay a portion of it, which of course gets into the fact that an income tax is a direct unapportioned tax, and so it's completely unlawful, and no one need ever pay it. Justice is the peace, majority, plurality, statistics, congressional business, annexation, so on and so on and so forth. Reforming laws, and then American common and public law. American common and public law. Public law. Public law is law that applies to everyone because it's a harm, damage, harm, loss, or injury. Common law is an aspect of your customs, your custom and usages of a particular area of what the people have determined that how they wish to govern themselves, how they determine to be self-governing, basically. So anyway, this is a really important book. It's only 90 pages. It's a really short read. You can get through it in a day. I suggest you get through it in a day, and then I suggest you read it to your children, or if you have grandchildren, read it to them in a day. say, sit down and read this book and learn how to be above everybody in the world, or just tell them how much power they're going to have by simply learning everything that's in the book. Do whatever you need to do to persuade people to read or listen to this book. And when truth be told, when I have the time, I've considered that I might very well do an audio book. I might very well audio read this book and then put it up on Amazon because I find it to be so important. But that's a project for another day. But until then, you should all feel free to read this on your own and truly understand the difference in the feel of what and how people felt in this nation prior to the Civil War, and the powers that they understood that they had. And think about also the attitude. Think of, and when you read this, feel about the attitude and how it's written. Think about what if people were the same way now. You think anybody'd be wearing a mask back then? No. You think anybody'd be paying property tax back then? No, and they didn't. Or any of the rest of these lunacy things, like having to have a license to travel from one place to another. Ridiculous. Absolutely stupid and ridiculous, and none of it being constitutional. So anyway, we're coming up on an hour. I think I'll leave off with this document and let everybody just take a look at it, and then next week I'll come back and we'll take a look at the next one on the list, which will be the primer on grand jury law, natural law, and equity. So, which is it's a good little document written by, I believe it was a privately written doc. Yeah, it's written by, or no, sorry, it was written by a former judge. So this is actually a good one. This is kind of like one of these rare documents that you find from a judge that kind of goes slightly rogue, like Judge Dale did. This, however, is very straightforward as to what it talks about, but we can get into this next time. So tonight, we'll call it a night, and afterwards, I'll turn off the recording here, and thanks everybody for showing up, and we can afterwards talk amongst ourselves.